Good evening, folks. This is Mark with JTech, and I'm coming to you guys tonight with some explanation on what we're doing with cylinder heads. We've got some heads pulled off of a Ford 2.9 Cologne engine, and what we're going to do is show how to remove the valve springs and take some basic measurements on the valves, the valve stems, as well as the valve guides. Anyway, I wanted to just kind of give you an idea. This is the cylinder head we're using. It's a pretty nice little V6 head. These are really famous for cracking, and we don't have a Magnaflux machine here, so I can't tell you whether it's cracked or not, but this is just purely for a demonstration, so I hope you'll work with me. What I'm getting ready to do is I'm going to tap on the valves. I'm only going to take one valve out, so I'm just going to kind of be selective here, but I'm going to tap on the valve. I've got a screwdriver, or I've got a socket and a hammer, and what I'm going to do is tap on the valve to unseat the keepers. So once you unseat the keepers, it makes it a little easier to take the keepers loose and the valve spring loose. Kind of helps a little bit. And with that, after we get that done, then I'm going to turn around and use our C-clamp in order to draw this valve out of its seat and take the thing apart. So here we go. Stand with me. Alright, sometimes you can, if you strike them like that, the keepers can in fact come loose and the valve can in fact fall out if you're lucky. But more often than not, you're going to have to turn around and take the valve springs out take the valves out one at a time. And be set up here. Head holder. There we go. All right. So what I'm going to do is get this valve spring compressor adjusted for the valve I'm going to work on. Make sure we're setting okay. All right, that's feeling pretty good. So it should come right loose, and just take your fingers and you go up in here on the back side of on the top of the valve, and you pull the keepers loose. This being the keepers, we got them out, so I'm going to lay them aside. The one thing you want to remember when you're doing this is to make sure that you keep the same valve spring, the same retainer, the same keepers, and the same valve with the same port it was out of. That's very important because valves do wear in a specific pattern to a given head. Unless you're going to refresh in the head, you want to go ahead and just leave that, make sure that that valve staying the way it is. The way we're approaching this tonight is we're going to do this like we're just changing valve stem seals. So I've got the keepers out, so I'm going to release the spring. I've got the spring off, and now I'm taking the spring out, and there's our spring. Here's our retainer. One of the things you want to make sure to do when you take any head apart, whether it's for having a complete head rework or if you want to just replace seals, one of the things you want to do is make sure you check your springs for squareness. You want to check them for strength. You want to check them for installed height. You want to check them for free height, and that way you get the most out of the performance out of your vehicle that you can. It's really important to ensure that, number one, you walk around and make sure there's none of them that are cracked. Usually if they crack, they're going to break right in half, and it's pretty evident. And then your retainers, you want to check them, make sure that they aren't pulling on the a lot of times your keepers can pull through the retainer, so you want to make sure you're good there. And also when you push your valve out, you want to make sure that your valve is in decent shape. Now, a lot of times you're going to get a valve, when you pull it apart, you're going to get it to where it won't quite come out, and you may have to take a burnish strip off, or maybe a really fine file, and just hit the edge of it, because a lot of times they can burr up, or they can actually mushroom a little bit on the top. It doesn't allow it to come through the guide. The last thing you want to do is to scar up your guide when you're pulling your valve out if you don't feel that that's an issue. The one way to verify whether your guide is good or not, which I don't have the machine here, or don't have the micrometer here with me right now is what we use. It's called a split ball gauge. And you'll put the split ball gauge down in the guide, and you're going to want to make sure that when you put it in the guide, you just snug it and make sure you have a little bit of drag on it, and then you want to pull it out, and then you want to take a micrometer and you're going to measure the diameter, if you will, of the ball that is split apart. They have a flat side on them, so you got to make sure you don't catch that flat side. You want to make sure you use both round sides. Now once you measure that, then you want to turn around and you want to take your valve and you want to measure your valve in 3 different places to ensure that it's wearing evenly. Okay, that's the same thing with the split ball gauge. You want to make sure the top and the bottom and the center of the keeper, or of the of the guide, are all wearing evenly. What you'll do is take the outer diameter of this, the inner diameter of your guide, and you'll subtract the two, and that'll give you an idea. Once you get that, you'll get the difference, and you split that difference in half because you're only getting the radius of it. So you want to make sure you get the circumference, and what that'll do is give you the clearance all the way around the valve. And depending on manufacturer, more often than not, you're going to be within about 1/10,000th to ensure that you have it's tight enough to it doesn't allow oil to leak down through and what have you. Okay, now with that being said, I'm going to pull this up. And this particular head has a positive lock valve seal on it. I'm not going to take it off because these are just spool heads and everybody trains with them, but they have a actual pair of pliers. You grab a hold of it, you rock it back and forth, and you pull and you rock it and you pull, and eventually it'll pop loose. And one thing you want to do is ensure the surface area is clean. Make sure you had no shims under the valve spring. That's very important. If you had shims under it, you must keep them pretty much where they're at, or else you'll definitely be off on your installed height. And the next thing you would do is once you got it cleaned up, you got your new valve stem seal. What you would do is take they have a valve stem installer. You push it down over the seal and just tap on it until you got it to lock down. Once you get it to lock down, you want to take your valve. Considering that it checks out properly and the guide checks out properly, you want to lubricate the end of the valve. One thing you might want to do when you got them out is to clean the valves up. It doesn't hurt anything. Take them to a wire brush and clean them up. They'll just flow that much better. And you want to walk around the perimeter of the valve. You want to make sure you don't have any hot spots. You want to make sure that the valve itself isn't hot. Your exhaust valves are really known for this. And exhaust valves, for the most part, are filled with sodium. So the sodium helps to wick away that temperature and get it out of the valve and up into the head where the water jackets can work on it and cool it down. So once you get ready to put it back together, what you want to do is take your head and flip it back over. And you want to turn around and back around this way. I apologize. You want to lubricate the stem of your valve. Make sure you got some oil on it. Then you want to put it back in to the guide. Just walk it in nice and smoothly. Make sure it goes in. Biggest thing about the lubricant is to ensure that the valve stem seal is lubricated, and that you got the protector over the end of the valve to keep that seal from getting nicked when they're putting it on with the valve on it. Okay, then from there you turn around and you put your valve spring back on, and then that's being after you've already checked it for tension and everything looks good. You take your valve spring compressor, you put it back on, nestle that in there, and turn around and you start pressing. Ensure that sorry about that. Doggone V's don't want to sit here. Wants to roll or rock on me. So we'll do this one more time. Pull these things a little closer to the edge of the bed so I can open this thing. There we go. That's considerably better. Back on there. And now you want to take and hold this, press your valve spring back down, and while you've got it held, you want to turn around and put your keepers on. It doesn't hurt to use a little light grease on this. assembly lube or just something that'll hold these keepers in place. That's the main thing. But once you get the keepers in place, you get them down in there, turn around and release the valve and the retainer. Take a look at your retainer and make sure that your retainer is setting good with the valve stem seal, or with the keepers. Give the keepers a light wrap to kind of seat them. Everything looks good. So I hope that's been informative to you. I know we had a couple mistakes in there, but I hope everything works out, and I hope you kind of understand what the process is all about. And really appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.